A few years ago, I realized something uncomfortable about myself. I was an Apple fanboy. Not casually, religiously. Every keynote felt like a personal invitation to open my wallet. Steve Jobs, with his beautiful black turtleneck and stinky bare feet, could get me to buy pretty much anything. New phone, obviously. New watch, sure. New headphones that look like a Pixar villain's earmuffs? Yep. I bought the AirPods Max. They were fine. They were also a clear sign that I had stopped asking a very basic question. Do I actually need this? So I made a consumption rule. For an entire year, no new Apple products. And not because Apple's bad, but because my behavior around Apple was automatic. My spending was on autopilot. And autopilot is the most expensive setting.
Welcome to your Money on Easy mode with Damien.
So that realization kicked off a series of small self-imposed experiments that I now think of as consumption rules. Not really budgets, just simple guardrails designed to interrupt automatic spending before it quietly drained my money and, in some cases, health. In this episode, we're talking about what happens when you intentionally slow down how you consume, whether that's limiting food delivery, rethinking how you buy clothes, repairing instead of upgrading your tech, or choosing experiences over stuff. You'll hear how these rules work in real life, why they're effective from a behavioral standpoint, and how even imperfect attempts can produce outsized results. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness, intention, and giving your money a job that actually aligns with how you want to live. Last year, I made another consumption rule that actually felt harder than the Apple one. I decided I could only order DoorDash once per month. This wasn't about hating on DoorDash, it was about recognizing a pattern in my life. Late at night, tired, a little stressed, watching Netflix on the couch, my brain would make a very predictable suggestion. Fast food, delivered right now. 20 minutes later, I'd be eating something greasy right before bed. The result was predictable too. Poor nutrition, poor sleep, and the next morning less energy and more regret. What made this rule powerful is that it attacked a habit loop in my life and a line item in my budget. According to Bloomberg, food delivery sales in the US have more than doubled since before the pandemic, driven largely by convenience and late night orders. At the same time, World Bank and public health data consistently show rising rates of poor diet quality linked to ultra-processed and fast food consumption. In other words, we're spending more on convenience food and we're paying for it twice, once with money and once with our health. So I made this consumption rule. My once a month rule didn't eliminate takeout, it reframed it. DoorDash went from an automatic coping mechanism to a deliberate choice. If I knew I only had one order available, I had to ask myself, is tonight really the night? Most nights, the answer was no. But when the answer was yes, I really enjoyed that Culver's order. This is where the mental model of friction really matters. When spending is effortless, behavior drifts towards the easiest option, not the best one. Adding friction forces intentionality. By limiting myself to one order, I inserted a pause between impulse and action. So I've had different consumption rules over the years. No Apple products, one DoorDash order per month. This year's focus is on clothing. Buy secondhand whenever possible and prioritize natural materials. Not doing this as a trend or a protest, but as a way to slow down and be honest about what I'm actually buying and why I'm buying it. You see, fast fashion has trained us to treat clothes as disposable. New drops every week, prices so low that they sell out in hours. According to the World Bank, the fashion industry is one of the largest contributors to pollution worldwide. And Bloomberg reports that global clothing production has roughly doubled over the past 2 decades, while the average consumer keeps getting clothing for far less time than before. More clothes, worse quality, more waste. I started noticing this in my own closet with help from my wife. Synthetic fabrics that didn't breathe well, seams that twisted after a few washes, shirts that looked tired before I was tired of them. The problem was that I owned too many clothes and that too many of them were poorly made. This is where the mental model of cheap now, expensive later applies. Fast fashion lowers the upfront cost, but raises the long-term cost through replacement, waste, and even dissatisfaction. Natural fibers like wool, cotton, and linen tend to last longer, feel better, and they age more gracefully. And buying secondhand flips the economics. Someone else has already absorbed the depreciation on that clothing. The secondhand first rule adds a healthy pause to my buying. Before purchasing anything new, I ask myself, can I find this used? Is there a local shop that carries something that's better made? That pause matters. It moves me from impulse, once again, to intention. There's a community angle here too. Many intentional consumers are shifting spending away from massive retailers towards thrift stores, resale platforms, and small local businesses. Now that I've been following this consumption rule for a few months, what surprises me the most is how this rule is changing my standards. When clothes are harder to buy, I buy better. I wait for the right piece. I care how it's made. And I end up with fewer items that I actually like even more. So here's the takeaway. Fast fashion makes buying easy and living with your purchases hard. Secondhand, well-made clothing does the opposite. When you choose durability over disposability, you're saving money and opting out of a system designed to keep you buying things that you don't really want for very long. Quick question. If someone handed you $10,000 right now, would you know exactly what to do with it? Honestly, most people don't. And that uncertainty, well, that can cost you big time. So that's why I created something free just for you. Yes, F-R-E-E. And that is my Easy Mode Money Ladder. The Easy Mode Money Ladder is a simple step-by-step guide to help you figure out exactly what to do with your money and when. This is not a boring budget worksheet. This is a no fluff guide that tells you exactly when to build your emergency fund, how much to put in it, the best way to crush your debt, and the steps you need to take, which aren't that complicated, to start growing real long-term wealth. All of this one simple step at a time. No matter where you are in your money journey, this guide is for you. It will help you plan your next money move with confidence. And did I mention that it's free? Yep, totally free and will always be free. If you want this guide, and I think you should, then go to my show notes and click on the link to my Stan store. That's simply my internet storefront where I give away this guide for free. Download it, follow it, and let's put your money on easy mode. Now, back to the show. But let's be realistic. Not everyone is ready to go all in on buying every piece of clothing used. Maybe you need specific workwear, maybe sizing is tricky, maybe you just don't enjoy the hunt. That's fine. If secondhand only feels like too big of a leap, here's a clothing-related consumption rule that still moves you in the right direction, and that is to build a capsule wardrobe. At some point, a lot of people have this realization. They have a full closet and nothing to wear. Not because they lack options, but because they have too many that don't really work together. That's where the idea of a capsule wardrobe comes in, and despite how fashiony that sounds, it's really a money and decision-making strategy. A capsule wardrobe is built around a small number of versatile, timeless pieces that mix and match easily. Instead of buying constantly, you aim to buy fewer, better items. A common rule is one in, one out. If something new comes in, then something else has to leave. The one in, one out rule adds friction in the right place. Before buying something new, you have to ask, is this better than what I already own? Does it earn its spot in my closet? That question alone stops a huge percentage of impulse buys. It turns shopping from entertainment into a deliberate upgrade process. Does this matter financially? The capsule wardrobe works because it applies the mental model of constraint-driven creativity. When options are unlimited, decisions get sloppy. When options are limited, quality and intention rise. So by narrowing your wardrobe, you reduce the number of daily decisions and remove the constant urge to fix your style with yet another purchase. And there's a compounding effect here. Fewer clothes means less spending, less storage, and less clutter. Over time, that adds up to real money saved and mental energy regained. Because capsule wardrobes tend to favor classic pieces over trends, you're naturally pushed away from fast fashion and toward items that will last. Here's the takeaway. More clothes rarely solves a style problem, but better systems do. A capsule wardrobe replaces impulse with intention, clutter with clarity, and when you buy less, but buy better, your closet and your finances both breathe easier. One of the most powerful consumption rules you can adopt is simple. Repair first, replace second. Before buying a new device, ask one question: can this be fixed? That pause alone can save you a surprising amount of money and break the automatic upgrade cycle that most of us have been trained to follow. The benefits of this rule stack up pretty quickly. First, repairs are usually far cheaper than replacement. A battery, a screen, or a charging port repair often costs a fraction of a new device. Second, there's a psychological upside that people don't talk about enough. Fixing something creates a sense of competence and ownership. Your stuff stops feeling disposable and starts feeling useful again. And third, repair is meaningfully better for the environment. According to the World Bank, electronic waste is the fastest growing waste stream globally, driven largely by short device lifespans and frequent upgrades. Every repair delays that waste. When I did my year of not buying any Apple products, this rule was half-formed for me. I successfully avoided upgrades, but I wasn't brave enough to fully embrace repairs. When batteries faded or performance dipped, I tolerated the inconvenience instead of fixing the problem. But in hindsight, that was the missing piece. Repair isn't just about saving money, it's about completing the mindset shift away from replacement. However, big caveat here, not all devices are equally repairable, and that matters. At the top of the list of the most repairable devices are desktop computers. They're modular by design. Parts are standardized, accessible, and meant to be replaced. Laptops come a distant second, especially older or ultra-thin models. Batteries, storage, and memory are often serviceable, but this varies a lot brand to brand. So now smartphones sit way lower on the list of repairability. They are somewhat repairable, but have lots of limits. Batteries and screens are commonly replaced, but tight designs and proprietary parts raise the difficulty. Now at the bottom of the repairability list are super thin gadgets with sealed accessories where repair is intentionally discouraged. Understanding repairability before you buy is part of being an intentional consumer. This is where resources matter. iFixit is one of the best starting points. They have repairability scores, detailed teardown guides, and step-by-step repair instructions for thousands of devices. And they sell toolkits designed to help you repair your modern electronics. Now, for people who don't want to do it yourself, check out independent local repair shops. You'll save money, reduce waste, and support a local business. So here's the takeaway. Replacing is easy, but repairing is powerful. When you make repair your default first step, you spend less, waste less, and regain control over the things that you own. The most underrated upgrade you can make is learning how to fix what you already have. Okay, at some point, almost everyone has had this experience. You buy something that you've been wanting. A new device, a new outfit, something shiny and exciting. For a few days it feels great, and then it quietly fades into the background of your life. It ends up on a shelf or in a drawer, becoming just one more thing that you own, not one more thing that you remember. That's the heart of the next consumption rule. Choose experiences over things. And yes, my millennial generation is showing here. Our generation popularized this idea. Part of that was cultural, but part of it was a financial reality. We millennials came of age during recessions, rising housing costs, and student loan debt. So buying big, lasting assets often felt out of reach. Instead, we invested in experiences, travel, concerts, food, shared moments. According to Bloomberg, millennials spend a higher share of discretionary income on experiences than previous generations did at the same age. And at the same time, World Bank data shows global tourism and experience-based spending rebounded strongly after the pandemic, which signals a broader shift towards memory-driven consumption. People want stories, not just stuff. There's a happiness reason behind this too. Experiences tend to deliver value in 3 phases. First, you anticipate them, then you enjoy them in the moment, and finally, you relive them afterward through stories and photos. A purchase of a thing usually peaks at checkout and declines from there. And we see this in everyday life. Ask someone about the phone they bought 2 years ago, and the details are pretty fuzzy. But ask them about a trip, a concert, or a class that they loved, and they'll light right up. Choosing experiences also quietly solves a modern problem: accumulation. Stuff takes up space. It requires maintenance, it creates clutter, and decision fatigue. Experiences don't. They leave memories, not messes. You don't have to organize them or store them. They simply become part of who you are. Now, don't get me wrong, this rule doesn't mean never buying stuff. It means pausing before spending and asking the question, will this add to my story or just to my inventory? That pause can redirect thousands of dollars over time towards spending that actually feels worth it. So here's the takeaway. Money is meant to build a life that you remember. Millennials didn't choose experiences over things because it sounded cool. We did it because it worked. When you prioritize memories over merchandise, you reduce clutter, increase your happiness, and turn spending into something that lasts long after the receipt is gone. The next consumption rule is to use a waiting period before making big purchases. The idea is pretty simple. For any non-essential purchase above a certain dollar amount, wait 30 days before buying it. If after 30 days you still want it and it fits your finances, you buy it. If not, you let it go. This rule matters because modern spending is engineered for speed. According to Bloomberg, digital commerce continues to grow rapidly, with mobile and app-based shopping driving impulse purchases now more than ever. At the same time, data cited by Bankrate shows that a large percentage of consumers admit to making impulse purchases that they later regret, especially on discretionary items. The faster the checkout process, the weaker our self-control tends to be. So the 30-day rule works because it introduces time, and time is the enemy of impulse. Most urges are emotional, not rational. They spike quickly and fade just as fast. So when you delay, you separate the feeling from the decision. This is where the mental model of delayed gratification and opportunity cost comes into play. Every dollar you spend today is a dollar you can't use tomorrow. So waiting forces you to compare the purchase against the alternatives: saving, investing, travel, or a different thing you want to splurge on. Often the item loses in that comparison. I've used this rule repeatedly, and the pattern is almost always the same. Something feels urgent in the moment, a week later it feels optional, and a month later it feels irrelevant. And on the rare occasions where I still want the item after 30 days, the purchase feels completely different: calm, confident, intentional, and less buyer's remorse. This rule still lets you buy nice things. It just means you stop letting emotions and algorithms make the decision for you. You become the bottleneck in the system instead of the checkout page. Please understand this. Urgency is almost always manufactured. Real priorities can wait. When you give your spending decisions time to breathe, most impulses disappear, and the purchases that you do make actually are worth it. Waiting doesn't reduce your options, it improves them. Here's a question that can save you a lot of money, embarrassment, and regret. Would you still buy this if you couldn't tell anyone about it? That's the bought status test. It's one of the simplest ways to cut through noise when you're deciding whether to buy something or not. Most of us like to think that we're rational consumers, but in reality, a huge chunk of spending is driven by how we want to be seen. Our car, our phone, our watch, our kitchen renovation, even our vacations. We're not just buying the thing, we're buying the story and the bragging rights of the thing. So the bought status test, which is asking yourself if you buy it even if no one knew about it, works because it exposes these extrinsic motivations. If the main value of a purchase disappears the moment no one else can see it, talk about it, or be impressed by it, that's a red flag. You're not buying something that's of use to you or will bring you joy. You're just buying validation. There's definitely an emotional angle here, too. Research consistently shows that social comparison is a major driver of dissatisfaction. When your spending decisions are anchored on how others might perceive you, they rarely deliver lasting happiness. The boost fades, and then the baseline anxiety remains. The uncomfortable truth is this: no one is thinking about your purchases nearly as much as you think that they are. People are busy worrying about their own lives. Your car, your shoes, your kitchen backsplash, they maybe get a few seconds of attention. So the bought status test doesn't mean you can't buy nice things. It means you pause and ask yourself why. If you still want the item in total privacy, that's a good sign. If the appeal collapses without an audience, that's your cue to maybe walk away. So remember this: spending to impress others is one of the most expensive games you can play, and the payoff is tiny. When you run purchases through the bought status test, you stop funding other people's opinions and start buying things that actually improve your life. All right, so there is a handful of consumption rules for you. And if there's one thread running through everything that we talked about today, it's that overspending isn't a character flaw, it's autopilot. The Apple fanboy, the DoorDash late night spirals, the fast fashion traps, the endless upgrades, none of that starts as a big dramatic decision. It usually starts as friction disappearing and habits quietly taking over. The whole point of these consumption rules is to put friction back where it belongs. Not to punish yourself, but to protect your money, your time, your energy, and your health. When you buy clothes secondhand, when you build a capsule wardrobe, you're not just saving cash, you're raising your standards and lowering your daily mental and physical clutter. When you repair your devices instead of replace them, you're reclaiming ownership, keeping your money from constantly resetting the depreciation clock. When you choose experiences over stuff, or you use a waiting period before buying big items, you're telling your money to build a life that you'll actually remember instead of a house full of receipts and regrets. So here's your challenge. Pick one rule from this episode and try it for the next 30 days. Just one. Then message me or comment down below with what you chose, what surprised you the most. And because the goal isn't perfect discipline, it's building a system where your spending finally matches your values. See ya.
Thanks for listening to Your Money on Easy Mode. If you enjoyed this episode, then please subscribe and share it with a friend.